For this video review, I'm presenting a model 126710 from Clean Factory, featuring the Inter Milan bezel. Let's briefly introduce this timepiece. It has a 40mm case diameter, and functionally, it's a simple 3-hand model with an added GMT, or world time, function. Its most distinctive feature is the blue and black bicolor bezel. This is why we call it the Inter Milan bezel, owing to the color scheme of the outer ring. For the bracelet, you have the choice between the Jubilee and the Oyster. One personally prefer the Jubilee, as I find its aesthetic more appealing. Furthermore, the bezel on this watch is bidirectional, which is different from the Submariner. Many people might say, hey, your bezel seems incorrect, but that's not the case at all. Alright, without further ado, let's proceed to the macro review portion. Okay, let's now dive into the macro review. First, let's talk about the center pinion. You'll notice that this hand stack is slightly different from previous GMT models. It's not the usual rivet style shape. Instead, it resembles a hollow center pinion. In fact, this is another hand style I wanted to discuss. It's known as a tapered seconds hand tube. When the light hits it, you can see there's a solid point in the center. This is also a genuine hand configuration. It doesn't necessarily have to be a solid, riveted pinion to be a correct reproduction. This is just another hand shape, and it depends on which specific style the factory used when creating the mold. I won't elaborate further, let's look at the three hands. As you can see, the polishing is very clean, and the hands have a strong three-dimensional quality. They're very voluminous, not like the flat, so-called stamp sheet metal hands. Let's also examine the small counterweight on the seconds hand, that little circle. It's very well defined and sharp. Moving on, the tips of the hands are also quite sharp. This is a crucial detail for authenticating the hands. The tips must be sharp. If they aren't sharp enough, we can immediately disqualify the piece. It wouldn't even be considered a high-grade reproduction. Now let's look at the logo at 12 o'clock. This Rolex crown is executed very well. Note the shape of the GMT logo, it's worth remembering. It's reproduced with a high degree of accuracy. The font also has a certain thickness, which gives it a more three-dimensional and pleasant appearance. The baton indices are similar, featuring a very refined rounded polish. Let's take a look. The triangular index, as well as the circular indices, all have this very smooth, curved surface. The indices at 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock are all excellent. The text at the 6 o'clock position is also reproduced with high fidelity, no issues there. Let's focus on the painted hands. Looking at the paint application at the tips and tails, achieving such a smooth and flawless finish is very difficult, but this watch has managed it. Now for the 2.5x Cyclops magnifier, it has a blue anti-reflective coating. Regarding the date font, as we cycle through it, you might notice some very slight rough edges, but frankly, the date wheel is executed superbly. This is under a 20x look combined with the phone's digital zoom, so the magnification is immense. Achieving this level of quality is fantastic. Moreover, look at the background texture. It's very smooth and clean, with no pitting or black specks. This is quite impressive. I can only say it's very deceptive in its quality. Let's examine the finishing on the case edges. The polishing is equally clean, and you can see this concentric brushed pattern. Including the Rehaut, let's see how the engraving looks. The depth of the engraving on the Rehaut, as well as the font, are executed perfectly. These engravings can vary. Some are single-lined, some double, some thicker, some thinner. Personally, I prefer the slightly thicker style. It feels more robust. Speaking of the Inter Milan bezel, we must discuss the outer ring. Let's look at the joint between the colors. It's aligned with the 6 and the 18 on the opposite side. This same is very difficult to execute perfectly. You can see the platinum PVD coating in the numerals. It looks flawless. There's no visible color blade at the transition, which is very commendable. The platinum PVD filling in the bezel numerals is done exceptionally well. As we catch the light, you can see a slight metallic sheen. This is the effect of the platinum powder in the coating. Moving to the coin edge bezel, the polishing is very meticulous. The vertical brushing within the grooves and the horizontal brushing on the outer edge are both executed very cleanly. Let's look at the Jubilee bracelet. An area prone to issues is right here at the joints. You can see that the brushing on the case and the bracelet is very fine and well executed. And one detail I missed earlier is the laser-etched crown on the crystal. You can see it here, the 5 dots on top, those 5 circles, mark the standard orientation of the crown. Including the crystal itself, the execution is on point with very high fidelity. Let's look at the winding crown. As I always say about this part, the 5 points on the logo must be perfectly round, and the 5 prongs below must be uniform. The opening at the base of the crown logo should be a perfect oval, without any distortion. This looks good. Next, let's examine the clasp. Similarly, it follows the same craftsmanship as other clean factory watches, with rounded polishing and a very three-dimensional crown logo. We won't elaborate further on this part. Alright, that concludes the macro detail portion of the review. Okay, we've just gone through the macro details of this Inter Milan bezel watch. I hope you are satisfied with the level of detail presented. Let's talk a bit more about this watch. There's a noticeable difference between the 126,710 and the older 116,710. The presence of a small crown between Swiss and made at the 6 o'clock position. This is a simple way to distinguish them. The movement inside is the 3186. There's a key point to identify a high-quality 3186 movement. Look at the date function. See if the date can be adjusted backwards. The way the 3186 is adjusted is quite interesting. You adjust the date by moving the R hand, and it should be possible to move it backwards. If the date cannot be adjusted backwards, the movement is definitely substandard. And therefore, the watch itself would not be a top-tier product. As for this Inter Milan bezel model, I'm personally very pleased with its aesthetics. Especially when paired with the Jubilee bracelet, the watch has an effect that is both very sporty and youthful, avoiding the more subdued feeling of the Oyster bracelet. Although the Jubilee is traditionally considered a more formal bracelet, pairing it with a sports model creates a uniquely different aesthetic. I highly recommend the Jubilee option. Also, the feel of the bezel action has been improved. It used to feel a bit light, but now each click is very crisp and distinct. The damping is excellent. This is the latest upgrade, and I find it quite touching because it shows they've listened to the community's feedback. It's very gratifying. That concludes my review of this watch.